Nauti Styles didn't just have a yacht build take too long. Their company filed a federal lawsuit dropping a massive allegation, claiming they paid 83% of the price for a custom Explorer yacht that was only 70% complete, and that their money may have been secretly diverted elsewhere. The case was about to end in a brutal courtroom loss for the builder. The defendants didn't even respond, and the court entered a default. Then, out of nowhere, Nauti Styles suddenly dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice, and the entire scandal disappeared from public view. If you've been anywhere near Yacht YouTube, you know the duo behind the Nauti Styles channel, Victoria and Rico. They weren't just touring boats for fun anymore. By 2022, they decided to level up from simply reviewing the lifestyle to actually owning the ultimate centerpiece. They ordered a massive steel expedition-style Explorer yacht to use as a floating home base, a content machine, and the launchpad for a serious charter business. The builder they teamed up with wasn't some random backyard shop. It was Bering Yachts, a boutique builder famous for steel expedition vessels, led by founder Alexei Mikhailov. On paper, this partnership was absolutely flawless. NautiStyles would be customers, brand ambassadors, and even intended to push Bering into North America as sales reps, building incredible hype while their own dream yacht took shape. The project started as a massive 77-foot semi-custom build, publicly linked to the Bering 75% concept, but later rebranded as the Bering 82 as the design rapidly evolved. It was ambitious, incredibly complex, and absolutely not cheap. A build like this already lives on a razor's edge. We are talking about a heavy-duty steel hull, fully custom systems, specialized electrical setups, and extreme long-range cruising specs. Nauti Styles wanted it all. They demanded features like a silent mode battery capacity, massive solar integration, advanced water treatment, and a fully charter-ready galley. Essentially, they were building a vessel designed to be both an unstoppable global explorer and a highly profitable business asset. Early on, the energy was pure optimism. There were ceremonies, glossy photo ops, and even a first world moment. It was the exact kind of symbolic milestone that screams to the world that the dream is actually happening. But then, time started doing what it always does in high-stakes yacht builds. It turned all that excitement into suffocating pressure. By 2023, the massive delays became completely impossible to ignore. Under normal circumstances, a custom yacht in this elite class might land in a 2 to 3 year delivery window. Instead, the timeline just kept stretching. Nauti Styles addressed their audience, but kept the actual details incredibly vague, leaning heavily on confidentiality. And in the yachting world, confidentiality usually means one of two things. Either lawyers are starting to sniff around, or the behind-the-scenes relationship is getting intensely toxic. Then things got even weirder. The actual model name shifted. The project was originally discussed in the orbit of the Bering 75, and then suddenly it became the Bering 82. Even though the physical hull length stayed around the exact same range, the build suddenly had more volume, far more complexity, way more moving parts, and dramatically more opportunities for things to go completely sideways. By early 2025, the situation had deteriorated so much that Nauti Styles were openly concerned. They literally packed up and traveled all the way to Turkey, stepping foot in the shipyard to try and untangle the massive mess themselves. And then came the absolute bombshell moment that made the entire yachting community sit up straight. Nauti Styles posted a somber update implying they were literally pulling their unfinished yacht out of Bering's facility and transferring it to a completely different yard to finish the build. In this industry, that is not a normal project update. That is a massive, messy breakup. But then that video was suddenly deleted and made private, which only poured pure gasoline on the endless speculation. This is exactly where the story shifts from normal shipyard delays into a full-blown federal court battle. On July 30th, 2025, Angelis LLC, the business entity tied to Nauti Styles, officially filed suit in U.S. District Court in North Carolina. And they did not just sue Bering Yachts. The complaint went much wider, targeting an entire network of US and Turkish-affiliated entities, plus the founder himself, Alexei Mikhailov, and others. The allegations they dropped were incredibly heavy. At the absolute center of this lawsuit was a simple, terrifying math problem that should keep anyone building a custom yacht awake at night. Nauti Styles claimed they had already paid 83% of the total purchase price, but the yacht was only sitting at about 70% complete. That mathematical difference is critical. It does not just mean the builder was late. It strongly suggests the massive payments were running way ahead of the actual physical work. And that is exactly where the lawsuit's most dangerous claims come into play. They obviously sued for breach of contract over the missed deadlines and failed milestones, But they did not stop there. They alleged straight-up fraud and misrepresentation. They claimed they were being strung along and manipulated into making continuous payments. Then came the ultimate explosive allegation. The lawsuit claimed that the massive funds meant for their specific build were secretly siphoned off and diverted into what they described as an elaborate web of interrelated companies. They alleged their money was moved to fund other projects, or even used for personal expenses, leaving their own dream yacht dangerously underfunded. In plain English, they paid for their yacht, but their money did not stay on their yacht. That is the exact kind of massive claim that turns a bad build into a complete reputation grenade. It also explains exactly why the lawsuit aggressively targeted multiple individuals and related companies. The legal strategy was crystal clear. If the builder was hiding money and assets behind a complex maze of corporate walls, Nauti Styles was going to smash right through those walls to push for expanded and personal liability. Just to prove they were absolutely not playing games, they demanded a full jury trial. While the complaint didn't just print one neat, tidy number on page 1, the entire $2 million framing of the lawsuit comes from a narrative that repeatedly points to multi-million-dollar payments and catastrophic financial losses tied to a dream yacht that was never delivered. Now, here is the part that makes this entire story feel completely unreal. In a massive federal lawsuit like this, the defendant always responds, even if it is just a routine motion to dismiss, a technical argument about jurisdiction, or a desperate attempt to force arbitration. They do something. But in this case, multiple defendants completely went ghost. After being formally served in late August and early September of 2025, they went dead silent. When a defendant ignores a federal lawsuit, the court pulls its biggest lever: default. On December 8, 2025, the judge granted an entry of default against an entire list of defendants, including Bering Yachts, Bering Yacht Sales, Bering Marine, and several key individuals, including founder Alexei Mikhailov. While this is not a final verdict on the exact dollar amount of damages, it is essentially the court looking at the builder and saying, "You did not even show up to defend yourselves, so you lose on liability by default." Nauti Styles was suddenly holding all the cards. The very next step is usually a default judgment process where the plaintiff proves their financial damages and the court orders a massive payout. They were moments away from the ultimate legal victory. And then, they pulled the plug. On Christmas Eve, December 24, 2025, their company filed a voluntary dismissal with prejudice. In legal terms, that means the lawsuit is permanently over, and these exact claims can never be brought back to court again. By December 29th, the entire case was officially closed. Let me make this incredibly clear. Right after the defendants completely failed to respond and default was entered, Nauti Styles walked away from their own lawsuit in public and locked the door behind them. This is exactly why people say they do not want you to see this story. It is not because the court filings do not exist. They do. It is because the ending is an absolute black box. When a massive case like this gets dismissed with prejudice right at the absolute peak of the pressure, the most common explanation is a deeply private, ironclad settlement. We will never get to see the actual terms, and we will never get a public confession. Because the lawsuit ended this way, the explosive allegations of missing money and complex corporate webs were never officially proven in court. There was no dramatic trial, no deep dive into financial records, just total silence. But we can still see exactly what happened in the real world. First, there is the yacht itself. Nauti Styles had already hinted they were pulling their partially built vessel out of the Bering facility and moving it to a completely different yard in Turkey. As of early 2026, that massive build still appears to be under construction elsewhere. Their absolute dream yacht turned into an agonizing multi-year detour. The charter business is delayed, the floating empire is completely on hold, and every single passing month bleeds more money. Second, there is the massive financial reality. Even if they manage to magically salvage ownership of the steel hull, relocating and finishing a half-built expedition yacht is an incredibly brutal and expensive process. You do not just tow a massive steel ship down the street and pick up where you left off. You have to deal with a completely different yard, brand new labor, entirely different workflows, and painfully expensive rework. Third, there's the massive reputational fallout. For Nauti Styles, this ordeal is equal parts deep scar tissue and intense industry credibility. Their audience watched them go from peak hype to total heartbreak. While they stayed incredibly careful in public, likely on the strict advice of their legal team, their willingness to drag a major builder into federal court sends a chilling signal to the rest of the industry. This is a couple that will absolutely not sit back and quietly eat a multi-million-dollar loss. For Bering Yachts, even without a final guilty verdict, the damage is painfully obvious. In the elite yachting world, trust is your only real currency. Nobody is going to hand over a massive deposit if they think their money might get secretly reallocated. And the optics of completely ignoring a federal lawsuit, only for the case to mysteriously vanish, does not exactly scream financial stability. There were even reports that Bering started telling industry contacts they had officially severed all relationships with Nauti Styles. Whether that was just a desperate defensive PR spin or a strict condition of a confidential settlement, it shows exactly how fast a dream collaboration can turn into a highly toxic, do-not-mention topic. But the biggest consequence of all is the terrifying lesson every future buyer must learn from this exact saga. If you are paying for a build in milestone-based installments, your contract protection matters infinitely more than your excitement. Escrow guarantees, ironclad default clauses, and mandatory financial transparency suddenly stop being boring paperwork and immediately become your absolute survival gear. So, was the Nauti Styles yacht empire totally destroyed? The original version of it, the Bering partnership, the global ambassador role, the clean and perfect dream build storyline, is absolutely dead. The relationship imploded so violently that it ended up in federal court, only to be buried behind a sudden dismissal that tells the public absolutely nothing about what actually changed hands behind closed doors. But here is the ultimate twist. This story might not actually end with a shipwreck. If Nauti Styles manages to eventually finish that yacht at a new yard and finally launch it, the comeback storyline will be absolutely massive. Not just because the boat is glossy and beautiful, but because that victory was brutally earned. And even if they do not keep it, if they flip the hull, rebrand the project, or entirely walk away from the massive charter dream, that is still a completely understandable conclusion after surviving this kind of devastating financial and emotional hit. Either way, the permanent court record leaves us with one undeniable core truth. A beautiful YouTube dream build mutated into a multi-million-dollar legal crisis. The defendants refused to show up. A default was legally entered, and then the entire thing was abruptly shut down behind locked doors, and that is exactly why people keep endlessly searching for the lawsuit they never wanted you to see. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe right now so you never miss another deep dive. We have specifically handpicked these next videos that we highly recommend you watch right now. If you have any questions or theories about what really happened, drop them down in the comments because we read absolutely every single one. Thank you for being here, and we will see you back here tomorrow.